You know the image, right? Disney princess, maybe some talking animals, Pocahontas.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just maybe throw that picture out the window for now.
Definitely.
We're diving into the real story, the life of the young woman known as Pocahontas. Or actually, more accurately, Matoaka.
Yes. Matoaka.
Forget the cartoon. We're going to dig into the historical accounts, try and find the fascinating truth.
And what's fascinating right off the bat is just how many different ways there are to look at her story.
Yeah.
You've got the initial records from the English colonists themselves.
Right, the people who were there.
Exactly. Then later versions that really, leaned into this romantic angle.
Yeah.
And now, thankfully, stronger voices from indigenous communities offering their perspectives.
Which is so important.
Absolutely. So our goal today really is to try and cut through some of those layers.
Yeah.
Understand the key moments, the complexities of her life, well beyond that familiar myth.
Okay. So who was this person then at the heart of it?
Well, she was born around maybe 1595 or 1596. Her given name was Matoaka, like Pocahontas, the name history remembers. That was a nickname. It meant something like playful one.
Playful one. Huh.
And she wasn't just, living in isolation. She was part of a really powerful, well-organized society, the Powhatan Chiefdom.
Right. In the area we now call Virginia, this is late 16th, early 17th century.
Exactly, right at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
And it's crucial to get that the Powhatan Chiefdom wasn't just a few scattered villages. It was quite sophisticated, a hierarchical structure ruled by Chief Powhatan.
Her father.
Her father, yes. They had established customs, laws, trade networks even. So when the English settlers showed up, founded Jamestown in 1607.
He would have been just a kid.
Yeah, about 10 or 11 years old. And suddenly she's right at the center of this huge cultural collision.
And smack in the middle of that is Captain John Smith.
Right. That same year, 1607, he gets captured by Powhatan warriors.
Okay.
And he's brought before Chief Powhatan. Now, here's where the story gets, well, dramatic and very debated.
The saving scene.
The saving scene. Smith wrote about it later, this really vivid account of Pocahontas stepping in, putting her head over his to stop them from, executing him.
It's a powerful image. But debated, you said.
Oh, heavily scrutinized by historians, yes.
Yeah.
While it's, a compelling story, the thinking now, generally, is that it might have been, well, either an exaggeration by Smith,
Okay.
or maybe even a misunderstanding of some kind of Powhatan ritual, perhaps a symbolic adoption ceremony meant to bring Smith into their world, not literally saving him from death.
So less about a last-minute rescue, more about a cultural process he didn't fully grasp.
Possibly, yes. And that really shifts how you see it, doesn't it? From just like one heroic act to maybe a complex cultural exchange, it shows how different their ways of negotiating power and relationships were compared to the Europeans.
That makes a lot of sense. But whatever the exact details of that event,
Right.
what's clear is that Pocahontas becomes this really significant point of contact, a
Mhm.
go-between.
Absolutely. She emerges as this symbol of potential peace.
Mm-hmm.
We know she made frequent visits to the Jamestown settlement, which was really struggling.
They needed help.
Desperately. And she often brought food, supplies, things they really needed.
And she wasn't just dropping off supplies, right? She was actively involved.
It seems so. Especially as she got a bit older, we see evidence that she was acting as a kind of young intermediary, a liaison.
Like a diplomat.
In a way, yeah. There are accounts of her negotiating for the release of English captives, for instance, which shows, a surprising level of political awareness for someone her age.
And wasn't there something about cartwheels?
Yes, that detail always stands out. Apparently, she did cartwheels inside the Jamestown fort during some of her visits.
That paints quite a picture.
It really does. A young woman kind of navigating these incredibly tense cultural lines, but still holding on to that playful one spirit.
But as you said, a fragile piece, that couldn't last forever, could it? Especially with tensions rising, food shortages.
No, it couldn't. And that leads us into a really difficult chapter in her life. Her kidnapping in 1613.
Kidnapped by the English.
Yes. This was during the First Anglo-Powhatan War. The English basically took her hostage. They saw her as like a bargaining chip.
Leverage against her father.
Exactly. Pressure Chief Powhatan.
Wow. So just think about that. She's abducted, held captive. What happened to her then?
Well, during that time, her life changed dramatically. She was taught English customs, the English language.
And religion?
And religion, yes. Significantly, she converted to Christianity. She was baptized and given a new name.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Now, from the English colonists' point of view, this was seen as a huge success. Proof, they thought, that they could civilize the native population.
But from her perspective,
Ah,
or her people's.
it must have been incredibly traumatic. You have
Right.
to see it as a period of forced assimilation, a stripping away of her identity, her culture, her traditions.
Right. When you say forced assimilation, what did that actually look like? Beyond language, I mean. Was it clothes, beliefs?
Absolutely. Her whole way of life was basically upended. New clothes, new religious beliefs forced upon her, different daily routines. Everything was challenged and changed.
And it's during this captivity that she meets John Rolfe.
That's right. John Rolfe, an English tobacco planter. They met while she was being held.
And they married.
They did in 1614. And this marriage, it was seen as a really big deal at the time, a way to try and solidify peace between the English and the Powhatan. It's often called the Peace of Pocahontas or the Great Peace.
And they had a child.
Yes, in 1615, their son Thomas was born. And this,
But the story doesn't end there. She actually goes to England.
she does. Well, in many ways, it was a public relations exercise, carefully managed by the Virginia Company, the group funding the Jamestown colonies. She was presented in English society, dressed in fashionable English clothing, introduced to King James I in the royal court. She even had a formal portrait painted.
That engraving we sometimes see.
That's the one. Those images were circulated to kind of drum up support and investment for the colony back in England.
And while she was in England, didn't she run into John Smith again?
She did. A remarkable moment. But apparently it wasn't quite the sentimental reunion some view.
But tragically, this whole chapter, her time in England, it was cut short, wasn't it?
Very short. Just as they were getting ready to sail back to Virginia in 1617, Pocahontas became ill. She died very suddenly near London.
How old is she?
Only about 21, maybe 22 at the most. Incredibly young.
That's heartbreaking. Do we know what she died of?
Possibly pneumonia or tuberculosis or maybe even smallpox. European diseases were devastating to native populations.
Did she say anything at the end?
There's a reported final line spoken to John Rolfe, something like, "All must die, but 'tis enough that my child liveth."
Wow. 'Tis enough that my child liveth. Powerful.
It really is. It speaks volumes about her.
Maybe the real takeaway from Matoaka's true story is how crucial it is to keep seeking out the more nuanced accounts, the more difficult truths, especially from those perspectives that history has too often silenced.